We're now into the 16th month of the Ukraine crisis, with civilian casualties rising to their highest levels in months. Why is the Ukraine crisis not ending? Behind the scenes, what are the real reasons? I'm Pablo Chen, and welcome to Foxtel. Compared to a year ago, the Ukraine crisis has been somewhat slipping from the headlines, replaced by shooting massacres in different regions, a US partisan fight over the debt ceiling, and the increasing prices of gas and groceries. However, on the ground in Ukraine, hostilities appear to be escalating, with civilian casualties rising to their highest levels in months, surpassing a staggering count of 23,600 as verified by the United Nations. It also said the actual toll is likely to be much higher. As early as March 2022, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had noted that varied interest of different parties over the conflict. He said, "There are those in the West who don't mind a long war because it would mean exhausting Russia, even if this means the demise of Ukraine and comes at the cost of Ukrainian lives. This is definitely in the interest of some countries." So, who are these countries? Well, for starters, here's the answer by a former U.S. Army colonel and a former chief of staff to U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell.
So we have really disturbed the world with regard to this conflict. It needs to stop. We're there to reestablish our hegemony over the European Union. We're using Ukraine to reestablish our hegemony over them. Germany is the one we're leading with, and Germany just had polls that show 62% of the German people want this conflict over now.
So, in his words, the US wants to take this opportunity to reestablish its hegemony. And some say this could be why it didn't do what it could have to avert the conflict in the first place.
We continue to push to include Ukraine in NATO. And that led to the mess that we're in today. And this is why I say that the United States and NATO more generally is principally responsible for creating this crisis. Had we not pushed to include Ukraine in NATO in April 2008, if that issue had been taken off the table, then we wouldn't have the trouble today. In fact, Ukraine would still be intact.
These sentiments have been echoed by a host of American strategists. I'll give you a few examples. June 1997, 50 prominent foreign policy experts signed an open letter to President Bill Clinton calling America's efforts to expand NATO a policy error of historic proportions. Then we have George Kennan, the father of America's containment policy during the Cold War. He too called NATO expansion a tragic mistake with no reason whatsoever. The warnings went on for decades. In 2008, William J. Burns, the US ambassador to Moscow, wrote a letter to the State Department where he said that Ukrainian entry into NATO is the brightest of all red lines.
As the crisis rages on, there have been accusations from some European officials that the US is profiting from the conflict. One senior official told US media the country that is most profiting from the war is the US because they're selling more gas and at higher prices and because they were selling more weapons. US companies reportedly provided 50% of Europe's liquefied natural gas supplies in 2022, along with 12% of its oil, while global oil and gas trade routes have been withdrawn. Meanwhile, analysts have warned of the military-industrial complex expanding beyond what is needed in response to Ukraine.
Raytheon, along with 7 other weapons companies, including Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman, met earlier this month with top Pentagon brass in a classified meeting about not just supplying Ukraine, but replenishing U.S. and allied inventories.
I'm not going to deny that these kinds of conflicts can help certain companies. It's the reality of the situation.
According to data released by the State Department, U.S. weapons sales to other countries experienced a major uptick last year, jumping to more than $51 billion, a 49% boost from the previous year. Several defense companies, which largely rely on taxpayer-funded government contracts, reported record jumps. Lockheed Martin CEO said the company had all-time record orders. General Dynamics said its backlog of contracts reached an all-time high. And Raytheon Technologies earned a record backlog of $34 billion in 2022. The conflict has also sent other stocks surging. For example, the share price of Northrop Grumman reportedly increased 40% by the end of 2022, while Lockheed Martin's was up by 37%. It's been uncovered that some federal lawmakers hold stock in their defense contractors and could make a profit from the arms shipments to Ukraine. Now, with the military-industrial complex making big bucks, more people are seeing the behind-the-scenes reasons through a clearer lens.
But the question is not who invaded whom. The question is what will be the next morning. The next morning, the fact is that more and more people will die. Looking at the reality, looking at the figures, looking at the surroundings, looking at the fact that NATO is not ready to send troops, it's obvious that there is no victory for poor Ukrainians on the battlefield.
Es sind ja heute 20 Demos in München, die meisten mit dem Thema Frieden. Die einigende, übergreifende Meinung, dass man eben nicht mit einer Kriegseskalation den Frieden erzwingen kann.
Military aid is not helping anything, and it's become a proxy war. The United States basically has economic interests, and they see Europe as the big prize, but Ukraine as a stepping stone.
I think the best thing to do is to always talk.
All those billions of dollars, I need it at home. I need it for education. That's why our signs are money for education, not for war. Money for healthcare, not for war.
We're alienating our own most powerful allies in this process. We have been a warfare state since 9/11, and arguably we've been a warfare state for longer than that. Polls that indicate 3 billion people think we're insane. They truly think we're insane. They express it in different ways. We committed a war crime in 2003 in Iraq. The official list at the Treasury Department is over 32 countries that we have under sanction right now. The rest of the world, particularly people under 35 in poll after poll, show that they believe the United States might, in fact, be the greatest threat to their future.
Now, back to our initial question. Why is the Ukraine crisis not ending? While there could be a laundry list of reasons, we always need to get to the core of the issue. So what are your thoughts on this? We'd love to hear what you think. Please leave your comments down below or message us on social media. Also, if you like our show, please don't forget to click like and subscribe. I'm Pablo. See you next time.